Okay, everyone. So Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 24 is officially out, and I'm here to give you guys my review slash breakdown of the chapter. And there is definitely a lot that we do need to discuss in this chapter. And as I said in my spoiler review, there's a lot that I want to talk about with this chapter, and I am going to be discussing them here in this video. But before we do, guys, as always, I do have to ask you that if you want to show your support for what we do here on this channel, then make sure to leave a like, share this video out there, and please subscribe if you're new, but also comment down below with whatever your thoughts are. All those things really do help push videos out in the algorithm. And based on what we've been hearing lately about YouTube and some of the changes they've been making, it's more important now to, let leave likes on videos, comment, subscribe. All those things are definitely more important now than ever to help push videos into the algorithm, because otherwise they basically just are left out there to die and they're barely watched by anyone. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into this review. So here it is. This is chapter 24 called Uzumaki Kawaki. And yeah, it definitely is a Kawaki centric chapter, which we already knew going into it, since the previous chapter was setting up the fight between Kawaki and Jura. But there is definitely a lot more to this fight, as we end up finding out. So at the beginning of the chapter, we have right here, this is a continuation of the conversation that Boruto and Kawaki had in chapter 15, I think it was, where they were on top of Naruto's Hokage Stone monument, where Boruto told Kawaki about the limiters that Amado put on him, and that's why he doesn't have access to his full power, and it's why he hasn't been doing so well against some of the opponents that have been showing up lately. And like I said, we see the continuation of the conversation. Here is where we see that Boruto told him about the mission to the sand, and he's basically telling him that, once he's got his limiters removed, make sure to head on over to the sand and help us out with what we're about to do. And he goes on to tell him that basically, with Kawaki's help, they might have a chance against Jura, but then Kawaki refutes this by basically telling him that, listen, I only fought this guy for a little bit, but I can tell that this dude's power is way out of our league. Basically, even if him and Boruto team up, there's basically a very, very low chance that they might actually win. And that's when Boruto responds with throwing him one of his medallions, the ones that he has on him that he uses as markers for his flying Raijin Jutsu. And Boruto confirms what Kawaki says, that basically it's not possible for them to take down Jura, at least right now. And basically the actual plan is to basically run away with everyone with them. So basically make sure that everyone gets out of there alive. And the plan is for Kawaki to basically buy Boruto enough time for him to sense the marker that he gave to Kawaki so he can teleport everyone out of there with flying Raijin. And that's when we cut back to what's happening currently with the fight between Kawaki and Jura. And here is where we see a lot of very interesting tactics from both Kawaki and Jura. So the fight starts off with Jura firing off a Bijudama at Kawaki, and then Kawaki uses the Karma Mark to absorb it, which is, one of the benefits that you get from the Karma Mark. And I just want to talk about this a little bit. I do think it's a little bit funny that right now in Boruto, the only time we see chakra absorption being used is by people who have the Karma Mark, and for some reason not the beings who have the Rinnegan, even though the Rinnegan does allow you to use the ability to absorb chakra, and yet for some reason it's just never used by anyone who has the Rinnegan. Like literally the only character who has the Rinnegan who's used chakra absorption or the Preta Path is Momoshiki, and that's only because it was related to his Rinnegan ability, which is, he can absorb ninjutsu with one hand, with the Rinnegan in one hand, and then shoot it back at his opponent with the Rinnegan in his other palm. And that's the only time we've seen a Rinnegan user use chakra absorption. Any other time, it's always been the Karma Mark. Like Sasuke's never used it, and now all of the Awakened Shinju, despite having the Rinnegan, none of them use it. Like, for some reason, it's just never used. I don't know if Kishimoto and Kimoto just forgot that Rinnegan users can do this, but clearly they haven't forgotten that chakra absorption is a thing, because they always remember it with Karma Mark users. But again, Rinnegan users, just nothing, completely nothing. And it's something that still bothers me even to this day, because it's just never been explained why Rinnegan users just never use that incredibly useful ability. Like, honestly, one of the things that makes a Rinnegan user so difficult to deal with is because they basically render your use of ninjutsu completely useless, unless, like, there are some exceptions. Like in the fight against Naruto and Sasuke, right at the end, he basically told him that, okay, Kurama told Naruto that wait until the very end so that you can, use your Rasengan, because Sasuke had mastered the Rinnegan to the point where he can use ninjutsu at the same time as he, absorbs ninjutsu. So he basically can't use both abilities at the same time because he hasn't mastered the Rinnegan to the point where he could do that yet. So there are some exceptions, but for the most part, like, ninjutsu is basically useless against anyone who's got the Rinnegan because of that ability that they have to absorb it. But I don't know why, for some reason, going into Boruto, it's like that ability's just been completely forgotten about. Like the other abilities of the Rinnegan, I can understand, like, not really using them because those abilities are more widely known. So, and people know how to counter them, and they are kind of like they're abilities that you only use in specific situations. So you don't want to waste a chakra and use those abilities. But I feel like the chakra absorption ability, like, that's something you want to spam as much as possible because it basically makes you almost impossible to deal with, and you have to rely on just like pure, and you have to rely on just using your chakra to buff up your physical stats, which is the problem that Naruto and Sasuke ran into when facing Jigen and Ishiki, because he basically made most of their, like, most of the techniques that they have just completely useless. So yeah, just sorry, just seeing this and seeing him, absorb it just made me realize that, oh yeah, chakra absorption is a thing, but for some reason it's only with karma mark users. Rinnegan users just completely forgotten. It's completely forgotten that they can even do that. Like, I even talked about how, in the fight against Hidari, when Boruto used the whole flying Raijin in combination with the Rasengan to slam Hidari in the back with the Rasengan. Like, my question was, why didn't Hidari just use the Rinnegan to absorb it? Like, hell, if anything, I'm wondering why Boruto's even using ninjutsu against someone who has, the Rinnegan, because he should probably know, studying under Sasuke, he should know the Rinnegan can absorb ninjutsu. So if you go up against a Rinnegan user, don't bother using ninjutsu because they can just absorb it. And yet again, it seems like it's just completely forgotten about. I don't know. It's just, it's something that still bugs me even to this day. It's something I haven't forgotten about. But yeah, so he absorbs the Bijadama, but we see that it was just a distraction to get behind Kawaki, but Kawaki manages to react in time and shrinks himself using Sukune Ikona, and then he uses Daikokuten to summon the chakra cubes. And Boruto makes a smart move of flying away from the battlefield because, remember, the chakra cubes can disrupt your chakra even if you're just within, like, the area. So you want to make sure you're as far away from them as possible. And Jura actually does manage to destroy one of the chakra cubes, which is pretty impressive because those things are incredibly tough. Like, even Naruto, using Six Path Sage mode, can't, like, basically physically remove the chakra cubes away from him, but he was able to do it when he went into Baryon mode. At least he did in the anime. I don't remember if he did that in the manga, but yeah, he destroys one of the chakra cubes, and then Kawaki uses the opportunity to sneak up behind him, and then he slams him with his arm that he transforms, with his ninja tech, pushes Jura away, and then Jura just climbs back up. He, like, is barely affected by that attack. He climbs back up and then immediately flies towards Kawaki, and they have this little exchange. Kawaki using the bow staff to try and attack him. Jura's dodging. Jura goes with his own attack. Kawaki blocks, and they have this exchange where basically what we see here is Kawaki is definitely doing better against Jura than Boruto did. Now, yes, Kawaki is powered up by the karma mark, but personally, I think that even with the karma mark, I don't think Boruto would have done any better than he did before. And this is where we get the first page from the first spoiler that was posted on the Naruto website, where Kawaki jabs his staff into Jura's lower body, specifically around his kidney. And this is where we see something interesting. So we see the karma mark light up, and we see the end of the staff that he jammed into Jorah explode. So presumably he is basically using that technique where he, collects energy and does palm and then releases it into an attack. And he basically transferred it down the staff into Jorah's body and exploded. Now, this is an interesting technique. And I am wondering why Jigen didn't use this against Naruto and Sasuke. Now, of course, knowing Jigen, he probably didn't really need to, but I am wondering why Ishiki didn't do that when he was up against Baryon Mode Naruto. I feel like this would have been a pretty useful technique, unless he felt like maybe like even using this, it wasn't going to work against Baryon Mode, because Naruto in Baryon Mode was just countering every single one of his techniques until, the transformation ran out. And this is where we see Kawaki basically repeatedly hit Jorah with the same attack, and then he slams Jorah with his arm, and we cut to Boruto and we see him trying to control himself, and we see the marks from the karma mark just completely recede back to what it originally is, the small mark on his right palm, or on the palm of his right hand, excuse me. And then we see Kawaki just slowly walking towards Jorah, and we see the damage that Kawaki's like barrage of attacks did to Jorah. And this is where we see that Amato and Sumire are watching the fight through Kawaki's eyes. So if you remember, Amato obviously has has Kawaki's eyes basically acting as like sort of cameras, because again, he has Kawaki's entire body made or enhanced with his scientific ninja tech. And that's one of the things that he added, where he basically like turned his eyes into cameras, and he's essentially using it to see what Kawaki sees. And they see all the damage that was done to Jorah, and Sumire, God bless her, but she, is seeing this happen, and she's wondering if maybe Kawaki actually can, or she's about to say maybe he can win, and then Amato just immediately shuts that shit down, and he just tells her no. Now, this is interesting because you have to remember, Amato, he's not a shinobi, he's not a fighter, and yet even he can tell that Jorah is not going to go down here, because every time we cut to Jorah's face, even after all the damage, he is still unfazed by anything that Kawaki has shown in this fight. And again, it's backing up what Kawaki said at the beginning of this chapter to Boruto in that flashback, where he tells Boruto that, even if you and I team up, the power that this guy has just puts him way, way out of our league. Like, even without his limiters, and maybe even Boruto, if he had control of the karma mark, and all the power boost that he gets from it, the knowledge that he gets from Momoshiki's years of experience when it comes to fighting, it still might not be enough to take this guy down, because he's just that much of a monster. And then we see Jorah just taking his little notebook, and he's flipping through it, and he's looking at the information that he has about Kawaki. And he confirms that Kawaki is a lot stronger than he was before, and he's just wondering, how did Kawaki get so strong in such a short amount of time? And this is interesting because it reflects a moment from the Naruto and Ishiki fight, where Ishiki himself was also wondering, how the hell did Naruto get so strong in such a short amount of time when he was fighting Naruto in Baryon mode? And interestingly enough, Naruto and Kawaki essentially are both, again, what we're seeing with Kawaki is reflecting what we saw with Naruto, albeit for, different reasons. Like, Kawaki's motivations is different than with Naruto, because Naruto did it out of love for his son, his friend, and his village, and just the world. And he was willing to basically pay a big price in order to gain the power needed to protect them. But essentially, both of them are motivated by love. And that's obviously been a recurring theme ever since the Awakened Shinju have been introduced into the story, about how essentially, what it means to be human, and what the emotion of love does to people. And, Jorah even acknowledges in this moment how love can be a great weakness, but it seems like it can also be a reason for people to gain incredible power. And that's something that even goes back to the Naruto manga, where, we had moments, we see moments in the story where people, out of love for someone else, basically get much, much stronger. So, and we're seeing that theme continued here in Boruto. And this is where Kawaki, or excuse me, this is where Jura makes the comparison to what he's seeing with Kawaki to what he saw with Himawari, where he noticed that Himawari went from being someone who just couldn't do anything against Jura to suddenly gaining power that even allowed her to hit him in the first place. You know, she wasn't going to win, obviously, as we saw in that fight. But the fact that she went from like just being swatted away like a fly to even being able to pique Jura's interest at all, like that tells you again what love can do to a shinobi when it acts as a motivator. And he remembers how Inogen, like his sacrifice is what served as a trigger for Himawari to gain that power up. And he remembers that even Sarada, basically it's the same thing. She got a power up that allowed her to take down Ryu. And, you know, he's basically connecting the dots when it comes to all of these different events and how it's all connected to love. And this is what Jura is basically essentially studying right now. And it's what he's so curious about. Like, why is it that love, or why is it that love can make people so strong, even though he acknowledges that it can also be a great weakness? So, for example, with Boruto, he showed up to the battlefield to save Konohamaru because he cares about him, because Konohamaru is important to him. But at the same time, he did it knowing that it was going to basically risk his life. He did it knowing that Jura would show up and that he stood no chance of winning his Jura, yet he still showed up because, again, he was motivated by his love for Konohamaru. So he's just wondering, like, okay, like these two things seem to contradict each other. Like, love can be a weakness, but it can also be a reason why someone can get so strong, you know? And that's when he asks Kawaki for his opinion on this, and Kawaki just responds, you know, the way Kawaki does. He basically tells him, like, dude, I've got no interest in talking to you about this, and he just tries to blow him up, which of course doesn't work. And we see the reason why it doesn't work is because he summons the tree, presumably from the Shinju dimension, and it just blocks his attack like it's nothing. And that's when Jura is completely healed by the tree. And it's interesting because he essentially just showed both Kawaki and Boruto that, oh yeah, you know, all the damage you guys did to me, you know, taking out my eye, taking out my foot, all the damage you did to my body. Oh yeah, like bro, I could have healed all that shit like it was nothing. Like your guys' attacks, all the effort you put in to put that little bit of damage into me, none of it mattered because I could heal myself in an instant. And he builds himself this throne of like, you know, wood from the tree that he, you know, the tree that he summoned. And this is where we get a conversation from Jura, or not a conversation, excuse me. This is where we get a comment from Jura about how he wonders why Kawaki came to Boruto's rescue, because according to what he knows, the only person Kawaki is even interested in is Naruto. And this is where he immediately puts the pieces together. He remembers how when he went to Konoha, he was looking for Naruto and then he was told that Naruto died. But now looking at Kawaki, he immediately figures it out. Naruto is definitely still alive. Now, this is interesting because remember, Amado and Sumire are watching this through Kawaki's eyes, and they know that Jura knows that Naruto is alive and he's looking for him. Now, this is interesting because if you remember, Damon did tell Kawaki that, listen, this lie that you've, you know, concocted throughout the years about Naruto being dead, Boruto being the one who killed him, this lie is not going to last. Eventually, the secret is going to get out that you lied. And remember, for anyone who might be confused, Naruto being dead is not a part of omnipotence. So even if it's revealed to everyone that Naruto is alive, there's no omnipotence to erase it from people's minds. The only thing omnipotence did is switch the memories of people of Boruto and Kawaki. They think Boruto is Kawaki and Kawaki's Boruto. That's it. The whole Naruto being dead thing came after omnipotence was cast. So if people find out that Naruto's alive, there's no omnipotence to save Kawaki's ass this time. Like, people are going to know that he lied, and they are going to turn against him because they're going to wonder, why did you lie to us about this? Why did you lie to us that Naruto is dead? But more importantly, why did you tell us that Kawaki, again, in their mind, Boruto, killed him? Why did you tell us? Why did you lie about this? So, yeah, we definitely are going to see people like this secret is definitely going to get out. Like, we're seeing so many setups for that event eventually happening. The fact of Naruto being alive, it's going to be revealed to everyone in the village, and it's going to be revealed eventually to the whole world that Naruto Uzumaki is still alive and he's not dead, and he's been sealed away by Kawaki, who again in their mind is Boruto. That's going to get revealed eventually. He basically tells Kawaki that his goal is to consume Naruto Uzumaki along with Himawari and everything. And he tells him that the reason why he wants to absorb Naruto is because Naruto at one point was essentially the intermediary between all of the tailed beasts. And he's wondering if maybe the reason why that happened is because of love. And he's wondering if he absorbs Naruto, then he'll be able to learn more about love. And it's funny because he says he wants to know more about this. I'm pretty sure that if he just talks to Naruto, Naruto would be willing to explain that to him. But he's like, nah, you know what? I'll just absorb him. I don't have time for talk no jutsu or any of that. I'll just absorb you and I'll just take all that information. And just as Kawaki is about to start attacking again, Boruto shows up and tells him, all right, you know what? I'm done. We're good to go. Let's go ahead and go. And Jorah looks a little bit annoyed because he was apparently really invested in his conversation with Kawaki. And we get this interesting moment, and I'm wondering, like, okay, what the hell is going on here? Like, does Jorah have a plan? Because if not, then he really has no reason to let them go. Because remember, Jorah decided that not Kawaki, sorry, that Boruto needs to die. He decided already a while ago that Kawaki, or sorry, not Kawaki again. Like hell, even I'm confusing the two. But he's already decided that Boruto needs to die because Boruto has way too much information on them, and he's too much of a risk to just be allowed to live. So I'm just wondering, like, why doesn't he just like kill Boruto right here? I mean, we know he can, but instead he's just sitting by and okay. Sorry about that. I just had to, step away from it. But anyway, back to what we were talking about. So yeah, I'm just wondering why Jorah is essentially letting them go, specifically Boruto, when he's already made it clear that he wants to kill Boruto because again, he deemed Boruto to be a threat and that he knows too much about them to allow him to live, and yet here he has a chance to kill him and yet he's letting him go. So that's just something that kind of confuses me, and I'm wondering, like, why is he just allowing him to leave? But before they do go, Kawaki says he just wants to talk to Jorah for a minute, and he straight up tells him that look, he doesn't care about love, but he essentially gives Jorah credit for realizing that Naruto is essentially someone that he essentially, is, targeting because he actually has something that he wants. Basically, he's giving him props for realizing how great Naruto is. So even after all this time, Kawaki is still a Naruto fanboy. Um, and then he just, tells Jorah that, listen, no matter what, I will kill you. Like what I just said about you doesn't change that fact. I am going to kill you. And Jorah just says, okay, well, thanks for being honest. And then right before they leave, Jorah calls to Kawaki and he tells him that, listen, I'm happy we got to talk. So let's meet again if we ever get the chance. And then we get definitely a moment that is going to be memed all throughout the rest of the story. I guarantee you. We get a whole page of Kawaki and Boruto standing there, and Kawaki's just flipping off Jorah. Yeah, this moment is definitely gonna get memed. And then we cut back to where, the other guys are. We got back to Konohamaru, Mitsuki, Sarada, and Delta, who is there with them. And presumably Kawaki gave Delta the symbol that Boruto gave him to place right there where they are, or to place it at the location where they are so Boruto can travel, to it. And she's basically warning Konohamaru to step aside and not be so close to the symbol. And in the next page, we find out why, because when Boruto and Kawaki show up, Kawaki shows up and he stomps on Konohamaru's face. And we get a comedic moment from Konohamaru where he screams at Kawaki because Kawaki is asking him, what the hell is he doing? And Konohama just responds with, "Well, I mean that I'm the one who should be saying this. Like, why the hell did you step on my face?" And then Boruto asks Konohama like if he still has the thorn, the thorn bulb that from Matsuri, and Konohama confirms that yeah, I still have it. And then Boruto says that all right, so now we'll head straight to Konoha. And I'm wondering, like, are they going to run there? Are they going to fly there? I mean, Boruto and Kawaki can fly there, and they could probably get there, pretty quickly. But I don't know if I don't think they can carry. Well, actually, no. There's Boruto, Kawaki, and Delta. They can all fly, and I think yeah, they can. Two of them can carry Mitsuki and Sarada with them. But I'm wondering like how fast can they get there? I mean, Boruto, it'll take him too long to teleport there because again he has to sense where the like if he did leave one of his markers, it'll take him too long to sense its location. So I'm guessing they're probably going to fly there. That's going to be my guess. Now, one thing that I do want to talk about real quick, and I could be wrong because we'll see what they do with this. I will say, if this really is like the end of Matsuri and Ryu, then I'm going to be pretty damn disappointed because like we barely got anything out of their character. Like I feel like their characters were only just starting, and Ryu especially, like he literally like not that long ago he got introduced into the story and he's already been taken out. Like I feel like there's more they could do with these characters, and if they really have just been written out of the story, I don't know. I feel like I'll be really disappointed if that's the case. But at the same time, I feel like them being written out of the story could lead to answering another question that I think a lot of us have had, which is, what happens to people after they've been freed from the tree? People who, eventually got turned into, or people who had like Shinju clones made of them. What exactly happens to them after they've been, freed from the tree? Do they just, are they freed? Are they just returned back to normal? Like what exactly happens to them? So it could lead us to getting that question answered, but at the same time, I just I feel like it's kind of disappointing that they've already been written out of the story because I still feel like there's more that could be done with those two characters. So I don't know. It's just we'll see. We'll see what happens. So then we cut to Kashin Koji and Ada, where Ada is essentially telling him that, it's good that things turn out this way. We can breathe easy. And Kashin Koji is not happy because the gamble that Boruto took was way too dangerous. It could have very easily destroyed excuse me, that they had. And, he does acknowledge that yes, Boruto still being alive is definitely a good thing. But he also acknowledges that Boruto, or he clarifies to her that Boruto's actions completely changed the future. So now they have to go back and rework their plans because every plan that they had is has to be thrown out the window because the future's been changed. So now they have to, regroup and plan again. And it's definitely going to take some work. And this is why, again, Kashin Koji was very strict with Boruto, telling him, you have to follow my instructions exactly as I tell you, because we have to make sure that we go towards the good future where the Shinju are destroyed. There's no divine tree that's grown. Code is defeated. And anything to do with Kawaki, it's all dealt with. And everything is just fine. But Boruto, of course, did what he did. And now the future's been changed. And now we don't know what's going to happen, but we are told something. One of the futures that we saw when Kashin Koji got his, vision, or the update to his vision, and he tells Ada that, listen, you need to be careful because now Mamushi is going on the move and he is targeting her. Now, we did see that again in the previous chapter with the, the futures that Kashin Koji saw. And then we cut to the very last thing that we get in this chapter. And I'm not going to lie, this is definitely the part of the chapter that I enjoy the most because it's just so damn funny to me. And we're at the Shinju dimension where we see Jura and Hidari sitting down. Hidari's reading a book and he's looking over at Jura, wondering why he has this sort of like happy expression on his face. And he tells him that he's happy because Kawaki complimented him, sort of, like not really. I mean, in a way he did, yeah, but it's like, And this is where we get to know more about Hidari, or we get to see him act a little bit more like Sasuke, where he just tells him that, there's actually this phrase that I just learned that I think is very appropriate to use in this moment. After Jura, told him, that how happy he was that Kawaki praised him. And Jura's actually kind of curious because he's like, oh, you learned something new. Okay, what is it? And his response, at least in the official translation, is like essentially major ick. He tells him that he is essentially disgusted by Jura's reaction to Kawaki's compliment. And the very last thing we see in the chapter is just Jura's reaction to what Hidari just said. And it just reminds me of some of those moments that you'll see in, manga and anime where a person will just have this like blank facial expression in response to something someone said or did. Like in one of those like sort of comedy moments. And I am wondering like what this is going to look like when the anime eventually gets to it. So that's where the chapter ends. Now, again, overall, it's a good chapter. Like I said, there's definitely some things that I do have some issues with it. Definitely the biggest one that I have is Jura just allowing Boruto to leave, because again, this doesn't really line up with what we were told about what Jura's goal actually is. Like he flat out said that he wants to kill Boruto because Boruto is too much of a threat. He knows way too much about them. And it's just, I don't know. Like again, obviously we knew Boruto wasn't going to die because he is the main character. Like they're not going to kill him off. But at the same time, I feel like you could have accomplished this and still had Jura act sort of within character by essentially like having Boruto take Kawaki and teleport away while still having Jura try to actually get the kill on Boruto. You know what I mean? Like essentially, okay, think about it like this. Remember in the fight of Naruto and Sasuke versus Jigen, right? Jigen expressed to Sasuke that he wants to kill him because Sasuke is too much of a threat to Jura. Because, Sasuke obviously, has the counters to Jura, or not Jura, excuse me, has the counters to Jigen's abilities, the Sukune Kona Daikokuten. And he also has that like analytical ability that where he can completely break down all of your techniques and its weaknesses and come up with a plan against them, like right there on the spot. So basically he can't let him go because he could come back and it could be a lot dangerous, which obviously turned out to be true. And he immediately tried to kill him, but Naruto just bought him enough time to allow him to escape to keep Jigen from killing him. So I feel like they could have done something like that here. Now, I don't know if they stopped themselves because it would have been too similar to what happened there, but I just feel like that would have made a little bit more sense. Like after he got done with his conversation with Kawaki, he basically looks at Boruto and says, yeah, sorry, I can't let you go. You're still too much of a threat, and tries to like jump him, tries to kill him, but Boruto just barely manages to get away with flying Raijin and then immediately takes everyone and then teleports again and gets enough distance to where they're away from Jura's like ability to sense their, their location. I just feel like that probably would have made a little bit more sense as opposed to just Jura sitting there and just, allowing them to leave. Again, I understand like they're trying to paint Jura like he's more curious, or like his curiosity is his fatal flaw. And like his curiosity is what essentially stopped him. But I feel like maybe that other way would have probably made a lot more sense than what we have right here. Like this is honestly the only problem that I have with this chapter. This is the only thing that just stuck out to me as, okay, like we need to have a way to just have Boruto and Kawaki get away because, they're main characters and we can't kill them, even though like Jura would have been absolutely right to kill them right here because they are both threats to him. And Kawaki especially, he showed that he can get pretty strong in such a short amount of time. So it would be definitely smart for you to kill him right here. But anyway, yeah, so that's pretty much it. Like that's basically, that's basically all I have to say for this chapter. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed my review, make sure to leave a like, share the video out there, subscribe if you are new, ring the bell for notifications, and I will see you guys for my next video. Bye for now.